Well, hello and welcome. Just going to give it a second or two while everyone gets logged in, but welcome and thanks for joining. Okay, so again, hello and welcome. Thanks for joining this demo live from Spacestore, and thank you so much for taking some time out of your day today to join us on this presentation or this discussion and insights sharing session around the concepts or the topic of personal storage and how personal storage has either changed or evolved or adapted in the whole evolution of workspace, and how workspace is now being changed into more of a hybrid working environment, particularly due to changes that have happened over the last 18 months because of the global pandemic we're all coming through, but not just because of that, because of bigger changes that we've seen accelerating. So very excited to share some insights with you today. My name's Alex Harvey and I'm VP of Sales here at Spacestore. And thanks again to everyone who's joining us. Thanks if you've joined us on the Zoom platform. And thanks to if you're joining us on the LinkedIn live stream as well. We'd love to share some content that you feel is useful and informational to you. We'd love to also answer any questions you have as we go through today's discussion. So feel free to either use the chat box on Zoom, unmute yourself, or on the LinkedIn live stream, of course, to use the messaging function there. And of course, we'd also love to invite you to stay connected, to stay in touch, to maybe do a deeper dive at some point if you've got a particular project or client or situation that you'd like to understand in a bit more depth as to how personal storage and lockers might be able to support the hybrid working strategies of your clients. So with that said, let's dive straight in. And again, thanks to everyone who's just joined us. We're now kicking off with the Spacestore demo live, looking at the concept or the subject of personal storage and lockers and how they support the hybrid working strategies we're seeing with many of our clients here at Spacestore. So let me give you a few seconds of an introduction to Spacestore in case you've not met Spacestore in the past. The caption or the strapline on the screen there really tells the whole story that we want to share with you today, which is California cool plus London design, and creating awesome workspace furniture with our clients globally really started out with these two core influences that's made Spacestore the company we are today. So London design really references our heritage, our roots, if you like, our background here in London. And I'm presenting today from Spacestore's London Design Centre. So that really references our background for nearly 30 years creating modular workspace furniture. And then California Cool references a major stepping stone on our journey when Spacestore opened our first design centre or our first location in the United States around 10 years ago now, which really had come to us from our clients here in the UK and in Europe saying to us over and over again, something like, we want an office like Google or something along those lines. And too often for it to be a coincidence, for it to be a coincidental. So we really took the decision of opening our first design center in California so that we could be near to and imbibe the design trends and the spirit that was coming from, I suppose, particularly those tech clients in Silicon Valley, but the influence that they had and are having around not just the technology they produce, whether that's the way that our lives have changed in how we communicate and the smartphone and everything else that's come to us, but in how workplaces are designed and in how the attraction of talent to your organization or to your organizations is heavily influenced by that. Now, Spacestore, now having come through that journey, are now very much a global support partner for many of our clients, many of the clients we're privileged to work with. So through our production facilities here, and of course in the east and the west coast of the US, as well as our design centers, as well as of course our third-party strategic partners in other locations globally. And as I've touched on already, we're very, very proud of the clients that we're pleased to support and to serve and to work with. And that's a really important part of who Spacestore is, and also what influences us to design the products that we design. And we've certainly been privileged to co-create and to work with many of the most creative and innovative organizations globally. And that, as I say, has really influenced the types of products that we design, and seeing how they viewed their workplace, the importance of their workplace in attracting and retaining the best talent. And of course, in 2021, a big part of that conversation is attracting our talent, our employees, our staff, our teams to come back to the office. And that really brings us to the top person which fit into that whole story. Now, let me give you a few minutes of background around Spacestore viewpoint experience within the whole personal storage sector, because it's a really important, but also a very well established in the workplace already. Personal storage, lockers, there's nothing new there. But of course, how we work, how we use our workplaces is changing and has changed massively, not just in the last 18 months or 2 years, but over the last 5 to 10 years, and in creation of workspace lockers for 30 years now. We've been privileged to work with many clients, and we've been creating upward of 30,000 lockers globally, where they're using the same types of personal storage across multiple locations. And an important part of that is the use of technology and technology-based locker solutions, and a little bit more around work for different clients. But suffice to say, at this point, one of the big frustrations we found over the last 10 years with many of our clients is, particularly if you've got a large number of employees or locker users, is for the facilities team managing the keys and the lost keys and the replacement keys and the staff changes that come with that. So integrating technology and an impartial approach to the locking solution, so that we can recommend the right locking solution for you, for your client, or for the particular culture and brand of your organization. And of course, another important part of the whole implementation of any workplace project is the sustainability and the environmental impact of both that project, and also the ingredients and products that go is declare approved, which is a great accolade of the product itself, but also credited or need to be well rated. And then the products that Spacestore have and Spacestore design are very much based on modularity. So the ability to have a modular footprint, but that can be customized to suit your specific needs and your specific purpose. So the lockers we're looking at today, they are a particular design, particular size, a particular configuration to suit the use case we have here in our London Design Centre at Spacestore. Now, that could be quite different for your clients or for the project that you're involved with. And both the size, the width, the height and the depth of the locker, the aesthetic, the appearance and the materials that we're using, and also the locking strategy can all be customized to suit the specific requirements that you or your clients have. And of course, I should also mention that Spacestore produce and design and create much more than just personal storage and lockers. So maybe at some point you'd like to explore a little bit more around Spacestore's product offering, product portfolio, the other areas that Spacestore can help with today. But today we're really focusing on personal storage and how the personal storage systems that we're creating with our clients could be helpful for your clients in the future. And one of the things we've been doing since March 2020 is capturing data around the way that our clients are using their personal storage and how this has shifted as a result of the new workplace trends that we're seeing emerging or accelerating due to the global pandemic. So this manifests itself in a number of different ways. But for example, on the top left-hand side, you can see the graph showing the difference between dedicated and shared lockers. Now, what we mean by that, a dedicated locker is one that's assigned to an individual and is their locker, is their permanent locker. So that would always be my locker, locker number 1, 2, 3 is always my locker, and that's the one that I would always use and access. A shared locker, on the other hand, is more of what you might call a self-service locker. So a free address locker, you can come along and use any locker that you can see is available until you've finished with that. And then, of course, that can then be used by a different member of the team, maybe tomorrow or next week or whenever you've freed that locker. So the way that our clients are using those different types to support different workplace strategies, really important part of the conversation. And of course, how itself is operated. I've talked a little bit about the frustration that, so we've seen many clients move towards either a keypad-based system, whether that's battery operated, whether it's a manual or a mechanical keypad, or also towards something like an RFID, the employee badge that your clients would be using, the same employee badge they would be using to open access, maybe the thing to come through the security gates, maybe to come up in the elevators. The same security badge can be used to open and to claim and to book your lockers, or even an app on your smartphone can also be used. So that's another conversation with many of our clients. And then we just touched on the power that the locker system is powered by. So whether, again, that's a battery solution, whether it's a wired solution, or whether it's a manual or a mechanical type solution. And of course, each of these has pros and cons. So for example, the battery solution, you've got the ultimate flexibility of where you place those lockers. You don't need to be concerned about the location of power outlets, of infrastructure that would enable those lockers to be wired and powered. So you can place the lockers anywhere. And of course, in the future, if you were to shift these modular lockers around to maybe relocate them or reconfigure them in some other way in the future, you've got the ability to do that with battery solutions. But of course, the downside of a battery solution is that at some point in the future, depending on the lock system, between 2 and 10 years, at some point you will have to replace the batteries that have gone into that locking system. And that is a job of work that someone's going to have to do. And of course, that also has an environmental impact. The disposal of those batteries will have an environmental impact. With the wired systems, of course, you don't have that challenge. You don't ever need to consider replacing the batteries. And there is increased functionality with some of the wired systems, including higher levels of reporting, of visibility of how those lockers are being used through different pieces of software. But of course, as we touched on earlier, you do have to consider that we need a power outlet somewhere within the vicinity of each of those individual sets of lockers or banks of lockers, not just now, but if you were to reconfigure and rechange those in the future, you will also need to consider that at that point as well. So many pros and cons around how the client is choosing to implement the lock power systems. And then again, as we just touched on, the locker software systems are also a really powerful element for many of our clients in getting up to date and in real time data and insights as to how the lockers are being used. So which lockers are in use at any moment in time, whether that's at macro level where we're saying, 60% of our lockers are currently used, the balance are available, or whether that's drilling down to an individual locker level and saying this particular locker here that's been left locked for 3 months, is that because an employee left the organization? Is it because a visitor maybe came to the organization and didn't return their locker? So again, you can start to look at how these lockers are being used. And of course, that's also available as a global dashboard, which then starts to give you visibility across all of your lockers, which could then be broken up into subcategories by country, by building, by floor, maybe by team, by department. So a lot of configurability around the visibility of those lockers. And as I say, this data is something we've been capturing since March 2020. So this is projects that have been designed and influenced as a result of the global pandemic. And maybe in some cases, the projects have been redesigned. So you can see there's over 30,000 locker openings captured in this data. So some really interesting statistics that we can share, but we'll keep moving to the whole locker journey that we see with many of our clients. And again, this varies with every client, and this set of questions or suggestions on the screen here isn't exactly a linear process where we start with question 1 and work our way through to question 12, but it's more kind of pointers and conversation starters where we're having a locker conversation and developing a locker strategy to support the workplace strategy with one of our clients. And these are considerations, things that other clients have found useful. So we've talked about battery versus wired solution. That's one conversation point. We talked about maybe whether you want an app to open the lockers or to book the lockers, whether you want to use software to get visibility of how the lockers are being used. But a few other interesting points that we're hearing from clients. So for example, parcel delivery lockers is a really interesting conversation with many clients where people are getting maybe their Amazon parcels delivered to the office. particularly in a hybrid working situation where the employees may not necessarily be office-based the whole time, but even in just an agile working environment where the employee may not have a permanent desk. So the Amazon parcel arrives, how do we track down the employee that that parcel is for? And there's a software system which we can add to the Spacestore lockers, which enables somebody in maybe the concierge or maybe in the reception and lobby space to go to a bank of lockers to book in a parcel for that individual employee. It will make a locker available and would send a text to that employee or an email saying, you've got a parcel, it's in locker number 22. Here's a QR code or a PIN number so that you can go and claim that. And then over the next days or weeks or whenever it is that employee is then next in the office, they can come along, they can claim the parcel, they can retrieve the parcel, and then that locker is available for somebody else. So increased functionality around supporting that hybrid ways of working is a really important, and that's just one example. As I say, there's many points on the screen here. Now, what I'm going to do is just switch over to a live demo, because we want to look at not just the data and how our clients are using it, but also how this particular set of products actually work, and to give you some insights as to how they could be configured to suit maybe your client's requirements. So I'm just going to flip over to a different camera. Just give that 1 second. Okay, so just before we flip around to the other side, you can probably see a view of my legs and feet at the moment. I just wanted to give you a quick view of the lockers beneath this Spacestore unit, because one of the interesting points that comes up with a lot of projects and clients that Spacestore work on is the bottom locker really isn't very popular. People don't like having the bottom locker. It's a bit of a pain having to crouch down and access that locker. You can't easily access it. And many of our clients are looking or exploring into ways as to how we can make that bottom locker more useful, more attractive to the employees. So one of the things that many of our clients have done over a number of years now is increase the height of, if you like, the plinth or the toe kick. So instead of having a standard 4-inch or 100 millimeters if you're in Europe toe kick, you maybe double that to an 8-inch or 200 millimeter toe kick. But another thing that we're showcasing here in our design centre in London is the possibility of having that bottom locker as a locker drawer rather than a doored locker. So again, it just makes it that much more accessible for the employee. They can access their locker from above, which is a lot easier when you're using the bottom locker in this situation. So I just thought I'd show you that before we shift around to the other side of the lockers. And just going to scoot the camera around there, so excuse the rumbling of the wheels on the floor here. So we're now looking at some of the Spacestore technology-based locking systems, and this particular system is, or the lock system, I should say, is manufactured by an organisation called Gantner, who is one of Spacestore's locking partners, and a company that we partner with for many of our global projects. So we're going to demonstrate the capabilities of this system, how it might work for you, for your clients, and again, happy to answer any questions as we go through. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick walk through how the different locker functionality can be configured. So hopefully you can see here, if you get the camera pointing in the right direction, hopefully you can see here some of these lockers have got a red LED. That means the locker is currently in use. So these ones here have a red LED. Some of them have the green LED. That means it's available. So first and foremost, in the what we called earlier the free address type locker, the locker that's not assigned, that means that any employee can come along and can use a locker. And I'll just give you a quick demonstration of how that would work. So I've got a number of different RFID cards here. This one is titled Alex Harvey. So this is my card, and I'm going to come along. I want to use this locker here. So I'm going to come along, just press the button to open, place my belongings inside the locker. Now, as we open it, hopefully you can see there that we've got a small light as well on the lock itself. So you can see we've actually got a little light which helps light up the interior of the locker. And you may not also be able to see, but there's also a twin USB charge built into this particular lock system, which is really useful for many clients, particularly if you're looking at things like maybe charging employees' smartphones, maybe something like charging, for example, a headset that may be a cordless headset or a wireless headset for a call center type application. So as I say, this is how we use the non-assigned locker solution. So I'll put my stuff inside, I'll close the door, present my card, and that's now, you can see that's now turned red. That means that this locker is now claimed by me and nobody else can come along and use that. So this is now my locker and it's assigned to this card, the card, just a reminder, called Alex Harvey. Now, this locker is configured to be a non-assigned locker, but also the system now knows that Alex has a non-assigned locker, and the system is actually set up so that I couldn't claim two lockers. So for example, if I came to this second locker here and presented my card, hopefully you can see that that's flashing red at me. It's not letting me claim a second locker. So that's one of the functionalities. So I'm just going to release that locker, and again, I present my card, I can remove my kit, I can then release that locker to be available for somebody else. Now, I actually also have, in the case of my locker system, I actually also have an assigned locker that is assigned to me. So this one you'll see is already red. So this locker is actually already dedicated, is my dedicated locker. So again, you can see it's in use because it's red. I'll come along, I'll present my card, that automatically pops open. I might have my stuff in here already. If not, I can come along and place my goods inside. And then again, I'll just present my card, and then that's now locked, that individual locker. So those are the two functionalities, what we call a dedicated locker or a shared locker. And of course, with the software systems, we could flip any of these lockers between one mode and the other at any point. So if you needed maybe to start out life with the free address lockers, but then over time, because of the way the workplace strategy is developed, you want to go to more of a dedicated locker solution, that can also be really easily changed as we go through. And now the third locker functionality I wanted to look at today was this locker here, which is what's set up as what's known as a team locker. So this is a locker that a number of different employees all have access to using their own employee badges or swipe cards. So my card has access to this, also Callum's and also Andrew's. Now, this might be useful in a situation where you might have, for example, a team accessing shared resources. There might be particular shared resources that a team may all need to have access to. One of the use cases we had with a legal client a little while ago was they were actually physically signing legal documents, and they would use a shared team locker for a number of different executives who may be in the office at different times to sign that document, place it inside the locker, and then of course the next person can come along and sign it as well. So I say I'm still on my card, Alex Harvey's card, so I can have access to this team locker just by presenting my card. Again, exactly the same interior, and then when I close it, that's now going to lock against that card. Now I have another card in my pocket. So this card is Andrew's. So this is Andrew Baxter's card. So he also has access to this team locker. So again, using Andrew's card, he can come along, he can access the same locker. Maybe he needs to use some of the shared resources we have in there or something. And again, Andrew can then lock it, and then it's available for another employee to come along and use. So that's a quick overview of the functionality of the different, this particular system is a wired locking solution, but that's an overview of the functionality of the different setup configurations for some of how our clients are using these lockers. And as I mentioned earlier, the size of the lockers, the look of the lockers, so the material we've chosen for our design center here is this kind of bleached timber effect, but the look of the lockers could be very different depending on the look, the culture, the brand, the design of your workspaces. So whether that's something that's maybe natural timbers to tie in with other finishes and materials you have around the space, maybe it's something with really bright and bold colors, or maybe it's something with graphics across the whole front of the lockers, or maybe it's something that's designed to more kind of melt into the background, either as a standalone piece like we have it here. This particular one has the Palisades 2 across the top, so either as a standalone piece dividing space, or maybe set into a niche within drywall or within a millwork piece. Or maybe the size of the locker needs to change. And one of the interesting conversations we're having with a few clients at the moment is the customizing the side. This particular one is a 400 millimeters or 16-inch width, but we can change that both wider and narrower. We can make the door and openings higher or shorter if needed. We can also change the depth. So with some of our clients, they're looking to incorporate a keyboard and mouse. They're saying part of our hybrid working strategy is people don't own a desk, but they're not comfortable sharing the keyboard and mouse of whoever was last using that desk. So they actually want the locker to have an 18-inch clear internal depth so that you can actually store your keyboard and mouse inside that locker, oftentimes in a shelf which is kind of set down from the top so that you can slide your keyboard and mouse on the top and it's not crushed by all of the bags and everything else that you're putting in there. Now, just before we wrap up, I'm just going to show you a small bit of functionality on another optional piece of hardware that we also see being used on some of our projects, which is, I'll just zoom this camera down a bit and hopefully it'll focus. So this is a info terminal, which allows the employees, so particularly in that non-assigned locker situation where people are coming along and using any locker that's available, it allows the employee to come along and just remind themselves which locker they had. Now, as you will have seen, I've actually got 2 lockers assigned to me. I've got the team locker and I've got the personal locker. So if I present my card, this is now saying lockers, team lockers number 11 and assigned locker number 7. So if I was in a free address mode, in fact, I'll just quickly go along and claim one of these free address lockers. So I hope you heard that beep. That's now going to say you've got 3 lockers. So you've got your a free address locker number 12, you've got your team locker number 11, and you've got your assigned locker number 7. So that's another really useful piece of functionality, which can really help with that, with supporting the workplace strategies that you may be developing with your clients or within your own organization. So it's been great having you with me today. Hopefully I've shared something that will give you some inspiration around how personal storage might be used within your workplaces or within the future workplaces of your clients. As I mentioned earlier, we'd love to stay in touch. We'd love to stay connected. And if there's a project you'd like to discuss, either myself or one of my team would love to also support and assist you with that. Or perhaps you'd like to visit one of the Spacestore design centers, whether that's here in the UK, in London or Manchester, or across the United States in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. So that brings us to a close. Thanks again. We would love to answer any questions, but if not, have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon. If you've got any questions, feel free to either unmute or pop them into the chat box or use the messaging functionality on the LinkedIn live stream.